How's everybody's vision this morning? Terrible. All right, well, let's see how it goes. You're going to see some images up on the screen, one at a time, and they're going to be blurry. Don't worry, they're blurry. Your job is to figure out what they are. They're going to gradually get clearer and clearer. And so just shout it out whenever you recognize what it is as it becomes clearer. So here's the first one. There you go. All right, finish it off. Yes, there we go. Apple pie. You got it. Okay. Next one. Yeah, you're all quick. Yep, okay, let's finish that one off too. That was an easy one. Alright, try the last one. Sure. Oh, man. Some of you have better vision than you think. Look at that. Super blurry. Yeah, applause for Jean Marie coming in saving the day. We all need things to be clear. We need to understand. We need to know the course. We need to know where to turn. We need to know how to get there. We need things to be clear. And even more than that, we need to be clear about where God is. I think it's really easy when things are going really well to feel like we know where God is. God is right here. God is right next to me, hold my hand, sitting next to me. It feels like God is close. When things are not going as well, it's so easy to think that God is nowhere nearby, that God is somewhere else, that God has abandoned us, that God is absent, that God has defected. It's natural. Everybody has always felt that way. For generations and generations, the Bible is filled with times when people described that they felt distant from God or God was distant from them. But is it really true? Is that really what's happening? Ezekiel helps us understand some of these things because we need to know whether or not God is close or God is near. In the joyful times and in the challenging times, in the confusing times or in the times when we understand, we need to know how close God is, where God is, what God is doing, and how God is leading us and teaching us. So, throughout the Bible, it talks about ways that God makes things clear to us. 1 Corinthians talks about this idea that now we see things imperfectly, but we will see everything with perfect clarity. Because it's in the Bible that we're introduced to God, that we get to know God, that we start to see God, we start to understand God, and we find out how to follow God. That's God making things clear to us. So there's this way in which God is always on this trajectory for us to become clearer and clearer about who God is and about the life that we get to live. So there is clarity that comes, and what if we were even more clear about where God is at all times? If you've been following along with the reading plan in Ezekiel, which I know some of you have, thank you. You're very bold for reading Ezekiel. It is a strange book, for sure. But as you've been reading, if you have read the opening several chapters, Ezekiel seems to make things anything but clear. He's kind of a mess. He's a challenge. I mean, he's talking about dressing in weird ways, and he's talking about vehicles with wheels that have eyes on them that roll all over the place, and he's talking about being tied up and rolling on the ground, and he's talking about just strange things. And it seems like, well, Ezekiel, what are you doing? Ezekiel is a prophet. And a prophet's number one job, as we've said over and over with all the prophets, is to communicate God's message to us so that we can be more clear about who God is and where God is and what God's doing. Ezekiel and every other prophet is not trying to hide anything. They're not trying to keep us from understanding. They're not trying to baffle us. They are trying to help us see clearly. So even when things seem strange, or even when the prophets are doing really odd things, or even when it just doesn't quite make sense at first, there is a message of clarity in these books, because that's what God is trying to get across to us, even if it just seems strange. And that is equally true, if not more true, in the passage that we're going to look at today. So a little bit of a refresher just for Ezekiel for context, because it's not our day and age, so it's a little different. Just so a refresher, Ezekiel is part of the group of people that have been exiled out of their homeland. The superpower, scary nation has come and is on a path of systematically defeating the land and the people where Ezekiel lived, the people of Israel, God's people. It's a long-term thing. It's not like a flash war. Like all of a sudden they come in and everything's decimated in a day. This is years over which this enemy nation slowly chips away at these people and their land. So Ezekiel is one of the people in this group who, in the middle of the war, got taken away and put in a different place. He was moved away along with them, and he had to figure out, along with everybody else he was with, how do I live in a new land? How do I live in a place that's foreign to me? How do I live when I feel so far from everything that I've always known? And they're trying to navigate, being far from home. How do I chart this new course and do these new things and just start over? And at the same time, just feel like I've lost everything. Well, how does he act? What does he do? How do you think Ezekiel and his people feel about where God is? Close or far? Absolutely, far. It's the natural thing. We feel displaced, we feel like God's not with us, we're not sure what's going on. God seems far away. So, what God does is he gives Ezekiel 3 things to do. And Ezekiel is trying to communicate, God through Ezekiel is trying to communicate God's message to the people through 3 actions in this passage. So, here we go with the first one. So God is speaking, and now, son of man, to Ezekiel, take a large clay brick and set it down in front of you. Then draw a map of the city of Jerusalem on it. Show the city under siege. Build a wall around it so no one can escape. Set up the enemy camp and surround the city with siege ramps and battering rams. Then take an iron griddle and place it between you and the city. Turn toward the city and demonstrate how harsh the siege will be against Jerusalem. This will be a warning to the people of Israel. When I read this, I often think of like kids' play toys. Like your barnyard set, with the horse and the cow and the donkey and the chicken, and you got your little mini set. The barn we know is big, but you got your mini little set. Or the set of race cars in the ramp, and you build some race car track and you're racing it's miniature. It's life in miniature. But what often happens, when kids play with things is all of a sudden, like a tornado comes and destroys the barn, or, the big brother comes and stomps on the track, and the whole thing is decimated. That's kind of like Ezekiel. He's playing with his little toys, he's making a little model, and it's about to get destroyed. Even though this is pretty serious business, it is going to get destroyed. He's working with a clay tablet, which for them was probably a foot. So this is life in miniature. And he's building this model, the city of Jerusalem. And he's creating this whole war scene and all these things. Why is he doing this? What reason does God give that he's supposed to be doing all these different things? At the end of the paragraph, God says, this is a warning. A warning. A warning for what? It doesn't say. It doesn't say right here. I think we come to figure it out, but it doesn't say right here. It's some kind of a warning. God's grabbing their attention to say, I'm warning you about something. The other funny thing that Ezekiel does is he puts up the iron griddle. It's like taking, a cooking grate and just putting it up. And it goes between what? It goes between the little model and Ezekiel. And the prophet is supposed to represent God to the people, God's message to the people, God's voice to the people. So Ezekiel is kind of representing God. And so it's as if Ezekiel, God, is away from the city, and there's this divider, this barrier between them, and Ezekiel is supposed to sort of hide on the other side, as if God is kind of hiding God's self from the city, as if to say, I'm not that close as I was before. That sounds like a warning. So where is God? God is not as close as God was before. But where also is God? God is not absent. God did not leave. God did not wholesale give up and depart. God is still very close, very visible, knowing everything that's going on, understanding the whole situation, and even having a plan for the situation. Even when things look tough, God is not that far away. When the Apostle Paul, the evangelist Paul, was traveling around all the different Mediterranean world and taking the gospel to all sorts of different places, he ends up in Athens. And the conversation that he has, or the talk that he gives to the people, is so cool. Because if you remember anything about the passage, he's wandering around the city for a bit before he talks to the people. And he notices things, as he walks around the city. He's noticing all these different altars and shrines and things dedicated to gods, but they don't have specific names on them. They're to an unknown God. We would call them covering their bases. They're just dabbling in everything to make sure we're all covered. We got all the religions taken care of. We've given our homage and our honor to all the different places. And Paul sees that, and he gives them this talk, and he says, you people, you are super spiritual people. You are good in your understanding that there is more than just you. What you don't get is who you're giving all your honor to. And so Paul tells them about the Creator God, the Lord of the Bible, the God that we know, the God that we strive to follow. And here's what Paul says about in that moment. He says, God's purpose was for the nations to seek after God and perhaps feel their way toward Him and find Him, though He is not far away, not far from any one of us. For in Him we live and move and exist. God is not ever far away from us. If Jesus showed us anything, if Jesus sending the Spirit shows us anything, is that God is always very close to us, no matter what we just might feel like. Second thing that Ezekiel does. God says to him, now lie on your left side and place the sins of Israel on yourself. You are to bear their sins for the number of days you lie there on your side. I am requiring you to bear Israel's sins for 390 days, 1 day for each year of their sin. After that, turn over and lie on your right side for 40 days, 1 day for each year of Judah's sin. Meanwhile, keep staring at the siege of Jerusalem, lie there with your arm bared, and prophesy her destruction. I will tie you up with ropes so you won't be able to turn from side to side until the days of your siege have been completed. Can you imagine being Ezekiel? Let's start with the details. He's supposed to bear Israel's sin for 390 days. Obviously, that's a long time. Obviously, that's over a year. A year, he's supposed to bear Israel's sin. We have no idea what that meant or what that looks like. In some way or another, he was bearing a weight of something. This is a period of time that goes all the way back to the days of King Solomon. It was kind of like the heyday and the golden age of David and Solomon and this great faithful time. And then there was like a fall. And it was at the end of Solomon's reign. And from that time, way back, all the way until Ezekiel's time, and in their day and age, there's been this period that God describes as sinful. Not everybody was sinful in the way that God is describing and Ezekiel is describing, but there's this general national people sense of sin. That in the nation, things were just not right. So he's supposed to bear this sin and show it to the people. The warning, this is what's been going on. So then he flips over and he does it for 40 more days because of the 40 years of sin of Ezekiel's immediate people in their immediate situation, the 40 days of exile, the 40 years of exile that they're in. He's bearing the weight of their sin for all of these kinds of days. He's on the ground, people are watching this, people are seeing this warning that Ezekiel is demonstrating to the people. Obviously, this is not lighthearted fun. This is not just playing with toys. This is a deep warning to the people about what's going on. What God wants, though, what God has always wanted, is a way through this. Ezekiel is not just demonstrating that the people sin. Ezekiel is doing what? He was told to bear the weight of their sin. God is not just pointing a finger saying, look, you people, you sinned. He's saying, there's somebody who is bearing the weight, who has a way through this. God has a solution for all that is going on. What's the other thing that happens to Ezekiel? He's tied up in ropes so that he can't turn over. Does that ring a bell? Something that's bearing the sin of the people, that's tied up in ropes. Every year, the people of Israel would tie up an animal, and the priest would put both hands on the animal and would transfer, God says, the sins of the people onto this scapegoat, and then they would let the goat run out into the wilderness, never to return. The goat was bearing the sins of the people. God was again making a way for the people to be free from their sin. God always makes a way. And he's pointing to Ezekiel to say, I'm once again making a way for my people to not have to endure what they cannot fix. That's us. He constantly makes a way for this. When the disciples were with Jesus, trying to follow him kind of in the middle of their time with Jesus, and they didn't understand where Jesus was going and how this was all working out, Jesus says that famous line, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This is how you get to the Father. Jesus was the way, just like the scapegoat was the way, just like Ezekiel was the way, just like God constantly makes a way for us, no matter what is happening. Okay, third thing. This one has to do with food. Third thing. God says, now go and get some wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and emmer wheat, and mix them together in a storage jar. Use them to make bread for yourself during the 390 days that you will be lying on your side. Ration this out to yourself, 8 ounces of food for each day, and eat it at set times. Then measure out into a jar of water for each day, and drink it at set times. Prepare and eat this food as you would barley cakes. Then he told me, son of man, I will make food very scarce in Jerusalem. It will be weighed out with great care and eaten fearfully. The water will be rationed out drop by drop. So we're talking about food. We're not talking about fancy food. We're not talking about plush food or great restaurant food. We're talking about basic food. We know that because he's talking about all these different grains, barley and millet and these others. We kind of put those in the superfood realm, like really healthy whole grains. That's not what category they put them in. This was like poor people's food. It was the food that you would use if you didn't have any other food. And it was the food that you would use if food, as God describes, is scarce. So he's supposed to basically scrape together anything, trying to get all the ingredients he can from all these different places and make as much as he can to make it stretch, because God is going to make food scarce in their land, just like God is going to make water scarce in their land. Why? Because God is trying to warn the people. He's trying to warn the people, this is not my way, but I am making a way for you. What is God doing with the food? Yes, he's making it scarce, but he's also still providing. He hasn't taken the food away. What we see here is God is still providing food as Ezekiel and the people are going through what they're going through. He hasn't given up on them. He's still providing what they need. It is not completely gone away. God is still reaching out. God is still providing. God is still giving them what they need. Does this remind us of any other time when God told the people to make bread, especially transportable bread, bread for the journey? Just like God provided for them in advance at the time of Passover, the first Passover, God is providing for them yet again and promising to say, I will provide a way for you no matter what happens. One of the things that Jesus talked about over and over and over, that we hear again and again in the Gospels, is that he wants us to have eyes that see. Eyes that see so that we understand. Ears that hear so that we comprehend. May we have eyes to see where God is at any time and no matter whatever is happening. Because God is near, God is providing for us, and God is constantly making a way for us. Let's pray.